is, first of all, if you see that is a very sleepy otter, you just had a really great meal, and I do imagine that you're going to be doing the head bob. I'm going to really try to keep the pace nice and lively, so that is certainly a challenge. The second challenge I have, which is even worse, to be honest, is the next session is called Cookies, Chocolate, and Content. I mean, how do you really beat that? That's like the best session title ever. Whose is that? Who's the presenter? Nice, really excellent. So I'll just spend 5 minutes introducing you. So, and the third is you probably haven't had that giant cup of coffee that I'm hoping you will at least kind of glide you through the afternoon. So with that, my topic is hard data, hard proof that tone of voice has real business impact. And my interesting journey as a new CMO of a company called OutSystems has given me tremendous insight into the real impact of just tone of voice and getting that absolutely perfect for your audiences. So with that, it's interesting because when you think about content, you do the search and you kind of come up with the word cloud. So much of it is like the big words: data, social, distribution-oriented stuff. And what I thought was surprisingly missing from this is just this idea of tone. What do we really sound like? What is our brand? And to me, that was a tremendous revelation in the kind of thing that I'll share this afternoon. Now, this is not the 3 C's. There are actually no alliteration coming. But I do have 3 audiences that I say when I bring this up. There's 3 people that probably think about this topic, right? Oh, tone of voice. Sounds marketing-y. There's the skeptic, right? Okay, how many of you might be kind of like, I'm not really sure. Don't admit it, that's okay. Then there's the busy. Yeah, that's really cool, but we're really busy pumping out 50 blog posts a month, and we're just going to keep up with our pace. And that kind of perspective. And then the last perspective is the ready. Like, some of you truly embrace this idea that tone of voice absolutely matters. It's one of the most critical things you can do, but you haven't had the data to really kind of prove that out, and maybe not the organizational buy-in, given that you might have busy and skeptics running around. So with that, that's a bit of a backdrop for the type of audience that I think will be get some of this information and find it useful. So some background. So a little bit about the company that I'm with now, and I'll frame this as the good, the bad, and the ugly. Good news. There's some good news story, right? The industry is growing at a very fast rate. Not us as a company per se. These are just industry numbers that project like the category we're in is kind of taking off. And there's some really good evidence that that we're in a good place in that market space. And we're hiring lots of people, right? So this is great. Massive company growth for us, for our size, almost doubled in the last 18 months in terms of just number of employees. Now, that's a good news story, but you can also imagine the implications for content. What does that mean in terms of all these new people and what's going to happen? So, thus the bad, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Bad is a complex platform technology. How many of you have a product or service that is relatively complex, generally like hard to get? Don't we love to talk about that? Like, isn't that great? So these are 2 guys just staring at that cryptic whiteboard saying, when you put it like that, it makes complete sense. It's kind of the content strategy that we had. Unfortunately, it wasn't the most engaging, and it made sense to about 45 engineers in the world, but other than that, it was really difficult. So that was one of the bads. The other, although it's not a bad place to go for company meetings, the company's headquartered in Portugal. We had a lot of non-English writers. So this made a situation where people writing about a very complex topic, English wasn't their primary language, and they did a great job in trying, but ultimately it created a number of challenges from just a content perspective. And last but not least, we had a rookie, I'll call it the rookie content marketing strategy. So here's the comedian, and if you can read that, here's a top 10 list packed with keywords that search engines might like, followed by a passive-aggressive sales pitch. Stop me if you've heard this one before. How many think their content strategy looks a little bit too much like that? Right? So branded content, yeah. So this was a little bit, kind of the disposition of the of where the marketing content was at. Now, so that's the good, that's the bad. What comes next? The ugly, yeah. This is where it gets a little more scary. So the brand itself, or the voice of the, just the tone, the way, the words. I would say if I had to give you a visual, it looked like that. That is the visual representation of our content. I'll call this the 80-year-old let's see, big iron sales representative from 1962 maybe. But anyway, that was what the brand sounded like. Now, even better, here's what it looked like. Duran Duran from the 1980s. It was this really awkward combination of we're trying to look cool, but hey. But again, fantastic technology, super high opportunity to grow. So we took this as a challenge, and this is what the challenge was as the new CMO. Rebrand, revoice, increase new content, fix the old stuff, major product launch, and double the team size in 70 days. That was the plan. First of all, we had to get the voice right. All of that other stuff, in my firm belief, was going to fall short. We could just kick up the volume and have mediocre results. There was no doubt about that. But we had to get the voice right. And this is really what I call that tightrope walk. If you have a technical audience, you understand this very well. If you sell to IT professionals or engineers, or if some of you are IT professionals and engineers and you're consuming content, you know this. You have a very fine line to walk in terms of high quality, great content, and what's called marketing, fill in the blank, fluff, whatever. So we did some deep research, and we used Ask Google and Dilbert. This is what they came back with when they thought about the perception of marketing. This is engineers' perception of marketing. This is a perception study we did. I hate sales. Can you cross-train me to be an engineer? Absolutely. All the time you need is, or all you need is a time machine and a brain with twice as many folds as your current model. Maybe I could try marketing. That's just liquor and guessing. That is the perfect study of how engineers feel about marketing and marketing content. Why the hate? We did some more research, also on Google, found this nice infographic. But this is actually really accurate. Like if you just did the actual research, right? I never subscribed to this. You're spamming me. Who wrote this? A 5-year-old, right? So we had to have, everybody's taking pictures. Take your time. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, this is the challenge, right? So you have a highly complex product, highly complex platform, yet you're trying to be engaging with your voice so people actually read the content and consume it and find out what a great value you have. So with that, enter Acrolinx. This is where I will certainly give a shout out to how we use the platform right out of the gate. And if those of you I know are probably using it in different ways, but one of the things we did is we actually did a very interesting exercise where we analyzed the voice of our competitors and companies we admire. We went through this with lots and lots of content, and ultimately here's kind of a snapshot of that, right? So we used the voice scores, looked at Slack. Anybody familiar with Slack, right? Lots of people, awesome brand, awesome voice, incredible alignment between not only their content, but their product, their entire brand essence has that voice, which is fantastic. We looked at even some of our competitors. They were even kind of further off, and we were deep in the red zone, and this might even be generous. I mean, like that old, that was that. Like, here's a product tip for you guys. If you're building out the roadmap, if you want to insert that image into the voice score, like somebody writes something, they hit check, and then all of a sudden it's just boom, and like just it just has that look, right? It's just good. So anyway, that was what we did first. Now, once we had the voice at least kind of in line with what we wanted through a number of different exercises, we did build this kind of a content engine, a content team around this. I'll just share, because I know Phyllis talked about this earlier, and some people had some questions. So I'll just share what we did. Again, not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we basically said, okay, what's our GPS? Use that kind of acronym for global positioning story. What's the most important thing we want to tell, right? And then we also layered on that brand identity or brand voice. And then we identified two primary audiences, are these personas basically, and we had major messages and minor messages for each. And then basically content owners. So that blue box was the person that owned the voice for that particular audience. And those kind of peripheral people were content ambassadors that ultimately were feeding in. Some were part of marketing, some were part of engineering, some were part of sales support. I think it's really important not to squelch that. And I think, Phyllis, you brought that up earlier. You want those people creating content. You just don't want them creating bad content, right? So, and boy, you should have seen the reactions when we said, hey, we're going to run all this through marketing. It was some love. Okay, so they're producing content. This is really where Acrolinx really comes into play for us, is the production of those. We're using that really to tune those voice scores. They kind of become the editorial board of our content strategy. And then we do a couple of things. Package and publish. Ultimately, this is giving it that brand identity. So if you think about that brand sandwich, we've got that kind of brand identity on the voice happening on the front end with the story and the audiences and Acrolinx, and then this kind of brand identity on the visual side in that packaging and publishing. And then basically it's promote, whether that's through paid, program, social, and sales enablement. So just a quick background on that. So first project, website. This was the website when I started. Crazy, kind of just like where do you focus, right? Not exactly ideal from a layout perspective, but also just content-wise, right? And I know this is certainly, like what is OutSystems platform? There was just even some awkward naming, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So we cleaned that up, high-level core message, but the rest of it was fairly, deep content, right? We went deep on, the content. It's not like we went just shallow, but we made it very engaging in terms of just the writing. And this is just the first stat coming up. We saw some really great results just in this alone. So this is the before and after. You can see on the left here. So basically, just on that page, doubled time on page almost. That's a pretty big impact. Those of you that stare at, we're nodding, right? You stare at webstats, you're like, oh my gosh, that's huge. Even better though, because it wasn't just about the home page. We were able to really, I think, buy credibility with that very first impression. You buy credibility, and then all of a sudden, we went from 4 minutes time on site to 9 minutes time on site. That's a big, big leap. And then here, what was pretty interesting is the number of pages didn't dramatically increase. And the reason I say that is it's not like we built this kind of hide the content strategy where you're like, oh, it's over here, now what's next? And actually people didn't spend, it wasn't a lot more in terms of pages. They were just reading what we wrote, right? So again, time on site from 4 minutes to 9 minutes, that was a big home run for us. So we were happy with those results right out of the gate. So anyway, that was project number one. Ancillary benefit. I think one of the things that people often overlook is this helped significantly increase our Alexa rankings. Just overall, people coming back to the site, people sharing that content, saying, hey, check this out. I mean, ultimately, this is a big, big leap just in a short amount of time. So project number two, free trial. How many people have kind of a free trial, freemium business with their products? Maybe a little bit, or where people sign up, calls to action? No, you're hitting that otter phase. You're getting a little sleepy. Okay. Okay, that's okay. So project number two, we had this free trial experience. People get to a page, they had to sign up, then it's a fairly extensive process. It's not like it's just a quick plug-in you download. You have to actually get an activation email. We're provisioning things on Amazon and all of this. You complete the activation and then this tutorial process, and then ultimately you might build something and we nurture you along to do that. So those are the steps in there. And we had some analytics that said, wow, this is really pitiful. I mean, the dropout rate going from 2,000 people signing up on a day to 361 eventually kind of closing out was something that we thought we could do a lot better, right? And if you think about that, there was a lot of touch points there where there's content, right? And again, not huge, massive long-form content, but content, you had almost this 50% drop-off rate just in the first 10 minutes, right? That first impression is incredibly important. So poor conversion rates, lost customers, wasted advertising dollars. What's driving people to those landing pages? Lots and lots of ad dollars, right? So spending that money to drive people there and then all of a sudden realizing, wow, they're just showing up and leaving. Not very great. So we started, this was the sign-up page as it was, totally cleaned that up. And again, you could see just some of the language around this. Again, this is not only a design issue, I understand that's certainly part of it, but if you look at the before and after, just the words that we were using, sign up for your free OutSystems platform, personal environment, get started with OutSystems today. It's free forever and you'll get a first app built in a few minutes. Again, friendlier, livelier voice that lined up with what that kind of brand identity that we were trying to communicate. Cloud environment to deploy and run your personal apps. Ooh, that's clever. When to create your own place in the cloud, store all your assets and apps and logic securely. It's like a cubicle, but in the cloud. Anyway, clever stuff like that. The point was that paying that same brand across all of the experience had a huge impact because we were getting the traffic. Now all of a sudden, and I'll talk about this later, we had this kind of dissonance, right? People would get certain kind of messages early on, and then it's like, oh, now you start to sound like the old guy again. Okay, so the sign-up email, also another content touch, right? This was what they were getting. Nicely formatted with the giant beveled logo. Like, I don't even know why that would be there, but it looks like an eye, coming at you or something. But anyway, this was the welcome email. You know, again, just friendly, personalized content, but it's also really drove significant changes. So this is the spike. We basically launched this. This was immediate, right? You know, you don't have to be a scholar to figure out, like, this was huge for us, right? We did the math. Conversion rates increased from 61% to 87%. This is equivalent of $500,000 in advertising for our marketing budget. That's a big deal, right? Because I could spend more to get people to that page, but if they're converting at the same rate, I'm going to have to spend a lot more to keep that routine up. So I'll pause here. 30% of new customers start with a free trial, one of the other things we found out, right? So if you think about the downstream impact of not only driving people to a trial, but also driving them to purchase, this is great. Some additional benefits, just thinking about this, and again, this is where I would encourage all of you, depending on the type of content that you're creating, think about those additional downstream benefits. We saw several. One is long-term email open rates and engagement. Now again, not to go too deep in the weeds, but if you look over here, these are the open rates on emails. How many people see greater than 15 or 20% open rates on their nurture strategy or their nurture content? Or not sure. It's hard, right? That's very, very difficult to achieve that. And I would argue that the reason these open rates are so good is the experience they had at the very beginning. We've earned the right to send them additional content, and now we've become that kind of trusted, engaged vendor where they're like, oh yeah, the stuff I get from this vendor, it's pretty helpful. So anyway, I would say that there are lots of ancillary benefits if you look for it in your content strategy. Newsletter signups, a big spike again. That was a nice ancillary benefit. So my only recommendation here is not only look at the immediate impact that people often look for when they think of content measurements, right? How many likes, how many views, how many shares, and so forth, but there are downstream impacts that you may not be aware of. All right, project number 3, content marketing blog. I'm going to stop for a second. Any questions? We're kind of at that 15-minute left mark. Yeah.
Did you achieve that spike with the same team of writers, or you
same people?
Or you hired millennials all of a sudden?
Same people. Yeah. Yeah. I think in many cases, I would say that our writers felt constrained by a lack of definition around a voice, and they wanted to take us there. And it was great. So once we kind of used Acrolinx to say, look, you can see the difference, right? Look at the competitors. Like putting that one chart up there in front of the senior management team, putting it in front of the content writers, everybody knew it. They're like, yeah, that's why we suck. Like that's what they would say, right? It would be like, yeah, I just never realized you could actually measure it. So it was great. That was incredibly powerful. So any other questions? I'm going to keep going here. So yeah.
Will you target most of the U.S.?
What's that? No, global.
Sure. Was your global?
Global.
And
yeah, in fact, actually,
did it change?
ironically, the distribution is probably a little skewed. Mostly, it's probably 40% Europe, and then maybe 30% US and 30 APAC.
And did that tone of voice work the same
yeah,
in each location?
because we're targeting developers. So if this were a B2C story, I would say it might be different because you have very strong cultural bents toward content. But for us, developers are kind of universally hate marketing. So yeah, well, I'll do one more question. I'll keep up with the slides here. So.
How exactly did you run Acrolinx against your competitors' sites?
We literally cut and paste their content into a Google Doc, and hit check.
Okay,
yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, so kind of works. All right, project number 3, content marketing. We started and I'll talk about a couple things. The blog, we had engaging topics like smooth as butter, achieving 60 frames per second animation with CSS3. Interesting enough, we pushed a lot of content out onto Medium. Developers loved this. It was a great site. It was kind of neutral because the blog itself wasn't viewed as very cool. And we were pushing content out there, and this was great. But the problem is, it wasn't written incredibly well, and it certainly wasn't promoted if you think about that kind of content engine strategy. So when we talked to engineers and the people that wrote this kind of deep developer content, like Jose, who's a front-end developer, At first it was like, whoa, don't touch my content marketing, guys. Really, seriously. And what's interesting is this is the before and after. This is all of a sudden, and this is another great strategy. If you guys want to have some eager writers, you want to get writers signing up to start creating content because it's really hard to get that sometimes. Do this. This worked out great. So back in the first half of last year, these were some of the titles of posts that were out on Medium: changing UX jobs, managing master data, compelling, enterprise-grade performance. These are the titles of blog posts and the number of views. Okay, we took those same exact writers, used Acrolinx to get the tone better, but then also added that content engine strategy for distribution, and we saw like absolutely massive views. Right? I mean, these are the articles: Making Magic, Console Trick, Smooth as Butter. Jose now cannot stop wanting to create content. He was the author of this one. We can't wait we threw him a party when it hit 50,000 views. I mean, seriously, we've got all the engineers around and we're like, check this out. Jose's like, he's like famous, and everybody else wants to write all of a sudden. So we now have this amazing backlog of people wanting to write content. But this was one of the the greatest testaments to not only that nailing that voice, but also getting it putting it through that kind of content engine strategy. So we're real happy with that. Obviously that's huge impact on ad spend. I mean, if I can get that many views on different sources that are driving people back to our site, that's fantastic. Project number 4, bigger content. So we did some of this kind of large format research report oriented content. Again, really great there. Nothing fantastic to talk about other than the fact that I think because of the way it was written and promoted, we saw some really nice, just 12,000 people sharing a landing page on social media. I don't know. I mean, like that's a pretty decent uplift in traffic and conversion rate. So again, I think the applicability across all of our content marketing, you could see where getting this tone of voice and people wanting to read this content and share it really proves out. And then the last one here, share a voice. One of the things we look at really carefully is, we're in a highly competitive space. Lots of people kind of competing for that slice of that growing pie. And so we look at this really carefully. This chart just simply represents our competitor share of voice over time, and we're that big red zone here. Pretty happy with that, but if you think about what's driving that, that's people finding great content and sharing great content. Period, the end. This is not ad strategy. This is not spending more dollars than our competitors. This is simply us creating better content and having that content shared. And some of these companies are a lot better capitalized than us. So this is great to see, and we love showing this chart because ultimately this proves out the value of that entire content team, and it gets them pretty fired up. Okay, so again, significantly improving that content distribution, reducing costs, and improving that share of voice. So next one is rebranding. One of the things that you might have noticed in that homepage is there was this kind of awkward terminology that was used. What is OutSystems platform? That was the way in which they referred to the product before we rebranded. And it made for an interesting challenge with Acrolinx, and Andrew was great to get on the phone with me and say, okay, how do we find all of the incidences of this awkward phraseology? Because it's not grammatically incorrect. It just is, and it's awkward. So we basically changed it to what is the OutSystems platform, lowercase p, and just went through that massive refactoring. But again, you can imagine all the different places where that showed up wrong, right? All of our support content, hundreds of pages of technical documentation, all of the places and it's a 15-year-old company, right? So now you can imagine like you've got a legacy of just referencing that phrase and now trying to root that out and find it. It was a big challenge, but again, able to do it pretty effectively. So again, very specific brand terminology and product naming. Okay, last one is interesting. I think this is the last one. Chat, how many people are familiar with a company called Intercom? Okay, yeah, I mean, it's one of the emerging chat technologies, but very sophisticated for targeting, right? You can know exactly what people are coming into your site, launch specific messages to them to prompt engagement. It's not just like what you'd imagine like Google Chat to be like, where it's like, oh, someone appeared, I have no idea who they are, and now I'm going to send them a message. It's highly sophisticated for targeting and things like that. We see a continued, kind of engagement uptrend of people wanting to engage through that channel. Again, these are fairly small numbers. If you look at it on a weekly basis, maybe 300-400 people engaging, but you can see the trend. right? And a lot of that is being managed by a technical team, a highly technical team in Portugal, but they're using content to engage. So a lot of it is answering questions, a lot of it is kind of trying to get people to move on. So content is actually the main tool that these people are using to engage with this kind of chat audience. It's pretty compelling. We're investing a lot in how to do this, because if you think about it, we've driven all this traffic to the site. What are your options to engage? Put a big gated form and then stalk them. Or you can engage them while they're on your site and actually do something with them through some kind of relevant means. This is actually huge opportunity for us, but again, presents a problem because you have huge content opportunities to really mess up your brand. Okay, so so again, hard data. This is kind of a summary of I think what we've covered so far. Time on homepage, excited about that. Time on site went up. Improved SEO in that Alexa rank, so we're thrilled about that. Trial page click-through, so again, great opportunity to significantly change the funnel dynamics. Because again, when you think about a funnel, any of you that are involved in this kind of content funnel or sales funnel, you can do one of two things. You can either put more in the top or change those conversion rates all the way down. Makes a big difference. Overall trial conversion, content marketing in terms of views, social sharing, the product renaming, and this chat user satisfaction, we actually ask at the end of those engagements, are you happy with what you've experienced? And again, very high and positive feedback on that. So what's next for us? And then I'll take some questions. First is what I'm calling the One Voice Project. Ironic, it's on the back of your t-shirts. I don't know if you guys stole that from me or not. But no, I mean, we still have a disconnect. And this disconnect, I'm going to ask if someone wants to write a book with me, I'm going to throw out the title. I have nothing else other than the title. I'm going to call it Mullet Marketing. And those of you that are familiar with the mullet know that it might be good in the front, but you've got some problems in the back. So I think Mullet Marketing best describes what we are doing right now. We have fixed a couple of places in our content, no doubt, right? We've made it more engaging, more lively. We got that tone of voice, right? But there are a lot of places, you going deep into the content stream that is not great. And even as we think about this, our deep technical content, we need to really think about that brand, and even so far as to take that into the product. And that's where we're going next. So again, Mullet Marketing. I'm not going to have time to write the book. If some of you want to take it, just go with it. I'm fine. But again, one of the things we're doing is just really, this is not my slide. This is just a fictitious customer journey slide. But I think it does a good job at showing that complexity. We're thinking about this entire journey and the entire customer experience, and then thinking about all the places content touches people, and really mapping that to our voice and trying to do the prioritization around that. So that's the One Voice project. Localization, company's growing fast. We're going to be expanding into multiple regions. And multiple languages, so we're going to be starting to undertake this massive localization effort. So again, really critical that we get that foundation right. And then ultimately a lot more content. It's what fuels our business. It fuels a lot of our marketing, our success in growing as the rate we are. So with that, thank you all, and I'll take some questions now. I think we have about 5 more minutes. So great. Any questions? No? Okay. Yes?
Can you tell us more about the content on the chat? When you say you're serving up content, were these phrases or expressions and all that were basically helpful to them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Canned expressions based on specific information, but also canned expressions, or I'll call them prompts, for people we know are coming. Again, with Intercom, you actually have profile information on people coming in, whether it's through your own site analytics, previous engagement with your content or brand, or coming in through a site like Demandbase, where you're actually kind of profiling them, pre-profiling them before they even come to your site, and you're like, oh, I know this person's X. Doesn't happen every time, but in many cases you can get that. Prompt this with this kind of message. So it literally is heavily content dependent.
Thank you.
So, great. Yeah?
Yeah. Sean.
We wrote them in Google Docs and then popped them into Intercom. So yeah.
No one else can ask, but I'm going to ask one. It's all your fault. So Steve, with all the hard data you collected, everything you're working on there, were you able to monetize the impact of Acrolinx into all those data? I know there's other factors that go into a lot of that data, but were you able to monetize kind of what that was in there for Acrolinx?
Yeah, I mean, no, what's that? No, it's a good question. I mean, attribution, I mean, this is more of a philosophical marketing discussion. Attribution's tough, right? You can't like say the voice did it exclusively, but I will say a lot of those things, very few other things changed, right? A little bit on the design side, on some of the homepage and things like that, but once you get deeper into the content, that's all the written word. Like literally, you know, once you get like past the homepage and the visuals, it really is dependent on that. So in terms of hard dollars, I don't know. I mean, I threw out there $500,000. I'd say it's probably even more than that. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other feedback or questions? Yeah.
So you've got a couple of personas that you're working with. Did you just create a couple of rule sets? Because I think right now you can only assign one persona to a single rule set, and it's driving me crazy across the different content silos. So these guys will know that I've been asking to be able to assign a choice of personas to a particular guidance set. But how did you do it?
I don't know. I don't know how we did it. So you're saying to put a specific persona as a different rule set?
Yeah. Right now, if you want to assign a profile,
Yeah.
that's a persona. There's only a one-to-one match between the current rule sets.
Right.
So you have to either create multiple rule sets, each with a
no,
unique
we didn't.
persona.
I mean, we had one rule set. We were actually just looking at kind of the voice scores as looking at.
So you didn't distinguish between your voice scores for different personas?
No.
Okay.
Great. Any other feedback, questions? Scan in the room. You guys ready for? Oh yeah.
Is this a single implementation across all content types, emails, marketing pages, UI?
Yes.
Is a single
Right now, yeah, and we haven't expanded it beyond most of the things that I shared here. So that's the next kind of mullet marketing challenge. So. Yep. Yes.
Did you have was there a difference in terminology sets? Did you have different terminology for different people?
No. No. Awesome. Great. Any other questions? No? Wrap it up. Andrew's giving me the... Okay, thank you all.